Yo.
Hey guys, how's it going? It is Kire, joined with Shot once again here for another IMR video. And in today's video, we actually have two. This is going to be the one on my channel. Then we have one. Be sure to check out the other 5 factions on Veiled's channel as well. They should be going up relatively close to the same time, so you can get all of them there. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to rank the viability of each faction in the Faction Abyss on how far you can actually go, because this is some of the hardest, if not the hardest content in the game. And based on the characters you can actually get in the Faction Abyss, it's going to really determine if you can even go that far at all, or if you're just going to get bodied right in the beginning and it's a complete waste of resources to push that faction. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff we got to factor in, like how good the characters are, how good they are in other game modes, and if it's even worth progressing these characters in these environments, because a lot of these things are faction based and locked by that faction to that character. So let's begin here. We're going to be breaking down the first 5 in this video. So we have Nameless Brotherhood, and this faction here we're going to break down. Is it even possible to do this? If you built out a full roster for Nameless Brotherhood, could you actually push the Faction Abyss? Maybe it's either not possible, where it's just not going to happen, or there's a strong potential there, but we don't know for sure, because this is going to take a lot of testing, a lot of good gear, and a whole bunch of characters that might not necessarily get built otherwise to push this. Because Faction Abyss, for example, I have a very good full team of 5 with Catherine and everything, and I'm stuck at Faction 22 on that one. And I don't think there's anyone that's beaten Faction 30, to give you an idea, because if we put something impossible, that means it's like theoretically possible, but still, I don't even know if it's proven even by the biggest whales. So you could even argue that possible is just going to be left blank, and maybe is possible. It's kind of like a Facebook invite, where maybe or yes means maybe means no, and not possible means absolutely not going, and you're not even friends with the person. So it's kind of like that. That might be how we have to do this tier list. So be sure to keep that in mind, that this is incredibly difficult content, and saying something is maybe is probably the best you can even get realistically. So
yeah, and I think Nameless Brotherhood here, right off the bat, I'm going to say not possible. But
yes,
with the recent character, like a couple weeks ago, I think the faction got like 10 times better. That's the Dustin. With his support capabilities, a little bit of shield with exclusive 3, you get that 40% HP shield. And the important thing to know about, like, I guess we have to include the mythics because they're included with the faction, but that is an investment in Lucia. But she actually has like a massive amount of leech and speed with her innate passive, which can be very, very good for soloing it. So if you're looking to push a lot of stages with like just one character, Lucia is one of the best at that. Other than that, like, who are you bringing here? Like, who would your 5
speaking
be?
of that, just to your point about one character that you can bring in, I think Hardak is an amazing character that's just that really solid. Like, you build him up, he's a good carry. This is infinitely better than Holder for you. So if you have this guy, especially at exclusive 3, this is going to be your like one epic wonder to get a lot of stars, to be able to eventually maybe down the line get I'm blanking on her name, all the way down
Agatha.
here. Yeah, Agatha. Oh, I'm too far. Okay, so it's Agatha. So it's yes, and those kind of characters are going to make a big difference in between you getting Agatha way down the line or actually realistically getting Agatha. So I like something like Hard Deck, but the way I break down Faction Abyss is: do you have a shielder? Do you have an attack down? Do you have heals? Or do you have a speed reduction? Those are the big ones, in my opinion, to if you can actually beat this. Because, and ideally like a consolidation 2 or a defense down 2, but you need to have reliable shield, reliable attack down, and reliable speed down. And then those are going to be the big 3 debuffs / buffs that's going to make a big difference in getting there. In my opinion, I don't think there's a faction that has all 3, like a reliable attack down 2, a reliable good shield, and a reliable speed down. Usually you're stuck with only 2 out of the 3 from what I found. And this faction at least has Timmy, and I think Timmy's going to be absolutely necessary for this faction here, because he has the attack down 2 on his ultimate here. But other
yeah, it's actually a pretty good hit as well. I mean, you're going to hit 5 times. You could hit multiple targets. The chances are actually pretty solid. It's a 32% chance with 5 hits, pretty consistent. Yeah, I thought about Timmy as well. And also, what's cool about Timmy is that he gives the consolidation immediately at the beginning of each wave.
Mhm.
So I think Timmy is actually a really, really good choice here for faction.
Also, another thing too, crit rate down is a big deal in these, especially when you start to push them further, because every single one of them has a
Carry.
yeah,
Oh,
carry.
carry. It's
Yeah, so
actually a nightmare.
okay, yeah. So they all have carry. So we have to constantly consider this character here too, because she's in the first wave, but more importantly, the last wave against the boss, because she's going to be providing on her passive when she's dead this massive amount of crit rate, 24% crit rate. And from my testing, I believe the PvE bosses base have 30% crit rate. I don't know if there's ever going to be a guaranteed number there because it's very hard to test something like that. But I am guessing about 30% crit rate, so boost it up to over 50%. And when you get crit, you basically just get one shot when it comes to these
You die.
bosses. Yeah, it's just over. So having
So
that carry there is a
Timmy's
big
a
deal.
great one.
Yeah, Timmy's
Yeah, I
one of the
like
best.
Timmy. I also like Garena here. She's got the immortal. She has the revive. I think she's going to be a pretty critical one. I
Hmm.
mean, if any of you play Raid, I mean, revivers are kind of the crucial like glue pieces for a lot of factions. I think Garena is going to be that. Outside of like Timmy, Garena, I mean, we have some really solid characters that I'd use outside of the game, but none of them that like stand out for factions.
Yeah.
Like if I'm bringing in, I like Timmy, I like Garena, I like Dustin for the shield. And then for my damage, like I'm gonna bring in maybe Mutu, maybe Lucia. One other thing I like to look at when I'm thinking about this faction is their faction buff because it's actually like super game
Super.
changing
Yeah,
depending
it's
on what
massive.
faction it is. And this faction has an awkward one because you have a chance to get piercing on a crit. So we have to have a crit character to take advantage of that. And already the only two characters of those, five that I mentioned would be Mutu and Lucia.
Hmm.
And
Well,
I don't
Lester's
think
on
that's
there.
kind of
You got
yeah, Lester,
yeah.
if you wanted to use him. Outside of that, it's like, okay, am I going to get a ton of value out of this? Probably not, unless I'm running
Mhm.
more damage dealers.
I think Eric could potentially be good on this, and everyone's going to be getting him if you're playing him now. If you happen to be playing for this month to be able to get the character, like that monthly character that they give out, and because gives the guaranteed defense down too. But I feel like a lot of these things are win more things, where it's like, yes, you're going to need
Hmm.
that, but if you don't hit those major points there, you're going to just be screwed anyway. I think the things that this faction is lacking is the speed down and a reliable shielder besides just Dustin. This is just not going to cut it, in my opinion, to be able to do it, and also a reliable healer. I think those are the
You need
things
to be
that hold
really
this faction
tanky.
back. Huh?
You need to be really tanky for the boss. Like it's
Yes.
just one shots. I've tried for Sword Harbor Guards. I've tried for Dragon Threat. You just get one shot. Even with something like max HP, I have like Sigmund Shield, Cathrid Shield plus Consolidation. You just get one shot. Like
Yep. You
there's
completely
nothing
agree.
you could do. And I don't think the faction has enough survivability in this faction. So even with Dustin, even though I thought they got way better with that one epic, I
Hmm.
still would put them probably not possible personally.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's put him there. I think that's what would be your dream team scenario in with this comp, just to kind of end on a here. This is what you should be focusing on because I think you shouldn't even bother if you don't have Timmy and Dustin. Those would be like the two absolute must haves in my opinion. But other than that, what do you think?
I like Timmy. I like Dustin. I think Garena is going to be super useful for that immortal. Honestly, if you manual it, you might be able to time it so you can immortal the boss's, AOE
Mm.
attack, which could be interesting.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I think Lucia is a must-have. To be honest, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think anyone can pump up as much damage, nearly as much damage as he can. You kind of need a dot effect, not just straight up damage. And there's no one here that really provides a lot of good dots besides, maybe Lamas, but Lamas is pretty mediocre without another bleeder. So
Uh huh.
I would probably take Dustin, Garena, Timmy, Lucia, and then the last slot is hard. I'd either take Mutu or Eric. Eric, if I needed a little bit survivability for the waves, but I think the boss is the real heavy
Yeah.
hitter, so I think Mutu's probably a little bit better for that.
I'm trying to think if there's anything because he's just bringing damage. He's bringing the guaranteed defense down. He has good like burn damage there for like the waves, but it's like okay, you can take that in and handle the waves. It's really not that big of a deal. Um, yeah, obviously, like this guy's not going to get taken in at all. I'm thinking like the only other one I would think of is like maybe Hardak or Woosley for the. I don't know how reliable he is at providing enough poisons to make the damage reduction matter in that, because you really need to have other poisoners with him, and in his faction he doesn't have any other poisoners, so he's kind of
Yeah.
worthless there, which is
Same with Llamas. You have like no other
yeah.
bleeders besides Lucaia, and he's useless. Kind of, I don't know.
Mhm.
It's kind of an awkward, non-synergistic faction, I think, and yeah, that's kind of where I would be.
Yeah, yeah, they're all kind of over the place. And then, like you were saying, the piercing portion doesn't matter. It's more about surviving on a cooldown timer than it is to randomly be able to hit your piercing rate on a crit. It's like a double RNG mechanic there that is just
Yeah.
not that great. Okay, so let's put them in the not possible. Hopefully, they get a busted character maybe in the future to make it there. But you could probably get decently far with that. That is one thing about this faction that is good. They're a high value faction because they're like good one shot wonders. You can go an E3 Hardak, or you can go like a
Yep.
Lucaia and get super far. Whereas some factions just don't have that kind of character that can push through by
Agreed. I think
themselves.
this is the perfect faction to kind of sit on the sidelines and get to stage 11, 12, 13, something like that. And then just keep it with that, 39 stars or whatever. I think that's totally fine.
Yeah. Okay. So then now let's actually go to this faction here. All right, we are back here with Doom Legion. This is going to be the next faction here, and I think this is actually a pretty good faction. So I'm gonna, we're gonna go through the characters here, but I'm thinking either maybe or possible. But let's break them down here. But I think this is definitely one of the better factions for sure.
Agreed. Agreed. You have, in my opinion, the number one epic support in the game, which is Liz. Maybe you could argue Wim is a little bit better, but I mean, Liz is an absolutely amazing character. You have one of the strongest mythics in Lucifer. Already, those two characters of them themselves are guaranteed, along with Margarita, right? So that's like
Hmm.
an important thing. Like all three of those characters, like Liz, you get from the growth handbook. Margarita you get from daily login, and Lucifer you could earn yourself. And a lot of people go with Lucifer as their first mythic. So already I'm already happy because I already have 3 of the 5 team members that I want to run in this comp.
Yeah, and then super down the line, you can guarantee Augment too. So which is another burner. Yeah, so it's
Yep.
like there's that as well. So when it comes to every single person can do this and plan this out if these characters end up working out, I think that's really encouraging. That regardless of what kind of account you have, whatever pulls you have, you can always build towards this potentially, which I think is very cool. Also, I think
And
they
I
just
think
have. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I think they have the strongest faction buff in the game.
Mm.
They have potential 5% damage reduction per layer of buff. Like if you just think about that, we can get 25% potentially. And if we're looking at the characters we're using, like Liz is providing a buff, right? She potentially can provide 2 buffs with the resistance to debuffs. If you run another character, I don't know, someone that has other buffs with that, although they don't have a ton of buffs in their squad, so you're probably looking at 5, 10, 15% damage reduction consistently. But
Hmm.
that's amazing. That's a really, really strong passive.
It's super good. And I think they check a lot of the boxes you're looking for. Good healing, good shield, and then they have a good defense up. I think Elliot here is going to be massive for this because you get the defense up 2 and you also get res debuff on them for 1 turn. So but the big thing is the defense up 2 for 2 turns. That's really important. But the res debuff, you could time this on his second move. So he has the big AoE and then you can have the res debuff for the bleed that he has. So you're gonna need probably you can time it either way. You can either have Liz go first or Elliot go first, however you want to do it, but you can make sure you don't get hit with those bleed stacks, and then you just need to have something for that single target hit that is easily the one. If you're gonna take a hit, you're gonna want to take a hit from that. But this faction already has way more tools. It's their passive is way better. The multiple characters that you can get and make the survivability way better, and they're guaranteed. I think this is easily one of the best. I would say top 3 probably as we go through this. I'm a big fan of this. Also, their nuker in Lucifer is someone that you can easily target and make it to exclusive 5 if you wanted to, but he shields himself. So you don't have to worry about him getting nuked by the boss and getting targeted because he has that ability of being able to hide behind there, which I really like as well. So um, I'm a big
Yeah, and you
fan.
have a couple of other stronger epics as well. Like I think Creon can fit really well in here as an HP burner. Yeah, like a really strong other HP burner in Loof. I wouldn't say
Mhm.
really strong, but like
Yeah,
above average,
both of them are
epic
decent.
there. And like I said, you have those guaranteed characters. You can really easily make a comp. I would say if we were going to put any faction and we were to try to even out this list, I would say Doom Legion probably has to go into the possible category. That's where I
Mhm.
would put it.
Yeah, if we can't put this team in possible, then we might as well just put none of them in possible. So yeah, let's put them there. And I think if you had good gear, all the characters ready to go, you would need to get lucky on at least one or two of the pulls, in my opinion, to make this happen. And you would need to invest into Lucifer, which is, definitely questionable, and it would depend on the other characters you pull. I think probably some of the people that you would need to pull is like Focus, if you have Focus, and Elliot. I think those are going to be
Yep.
some must-haves to really push that forward. And then you can argue maybe you need extra damage in Bezmek, or an Akhman, to get there. But not having the survivability and like the combination of Focus resetting cooldowns and his own version of Immortal there for one turn on a 3-turn cooldown, which is sick. So you can kind of combo that where he's giving resetting the cooldowns on your people that are keeping you alive, and then he can guarantee that in a pinch there. And then maybe Liz comes in and heals you up and shields you right after. So I think there's definitely a lot of potential with this faction, but you do need to get lucky and pull some of these key heroes to make it happen.
Yeah, agreed. And I think I'm pretty confident. If I were to choose kind of the team that I were to go in with, I'm looking at Akhman. I think Akhman's amazing. I think Lucifer's amazing. I would definitely be using Liz. Those three, in my opinion, are probably 100%. And then with the faction buff, Eyelet, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
is actually really strong because she can go ahead and give the whole team 2 buffs. So if you time it out, you can time this for when you're getting 10% additional damage reduction from her alone, and the defense up and the resistance debuffs. And I think you're probably going to want to go with Focus and maybe another damage dealer. So, you got Akhman, Lucifer, Liz, Pilot, and then Focus, maybe is kind of the team
Hmm.
comp I'm looking at.
Yeah, I think that's a solid group there. Okay, now let's move on to the next one here. Okay, next we have Eternal Sect here. This is also, I think, a pretty good faction, but not nearly as free to play friendly as Doom Legion is. Let's break down these characters here. I think probably going to be on the possible or maybe side, but let's look into it here before we make that choice. First
Yeah,
character.
starting off, I mean, Quinlan and Mamek immediately shout out
Hmm.
to me. Those two,
Yes.
right?
Those are probably the two main ones that's going to get you to the boss, in Quinlan. But then Mamek is going to be the one that he does all of it. He's going to get you to the boss. He's going to help with survivability when you actually get to the boss too. So it's like this guy's insane. One of the biggest boosts to any account, in my opinion, just in the entire game. I think he's like a god tier character. Like he wasn't out when we did the tier list, but I think he's straight up god tier. He has this guaranteed when you have him with enough effect hit on his auto attack to apply attack down 2 and horrify, which is just amazing. And then on the boss there, that's going to be really crucial to make it to where you can actually survive against that boss because you need to have that attack down 2 and some kind of shielding there. So it's like he at least provides that. We need to look to the rest of the team there to see if you can actually survive. But overall, those are going to get you very far.
Yeah, I think another sleeper OP character here is someone that a lot of people, don't really think about because he's not really mentioned a lot. But I think Lamb is a secret OP if you're able to survive. That's the tricky part. But if you're able to get a couple turns on him and you start to stack up that black flame, he can actually grant himself damage immunity. And you can actually time that with the boss's hits, potentially.
Hmm.
And so you can actually make him pretty survivable. And then on top of that, he's going to be kind of like a permanent HP burn on the target, but potentially even better because you don't have to stack a bunch of them. He's just going to constantly get that value. So I think if you want to take down the boss and have a decently survivable character to do so, I think Lamb is probably going to be that third option here. Unfortunately, the epics kind of leave a bit to be desired. Like if I'm
Yeah,
looking
for
down
real.
here, I'm like maybe Vedar with the shield and the consolidation
Shield's
potentially, or
low
maybe
though, right?
Maguire.
It's like
Yeah, these
only.
shields are so
Yeah,
small.
it's consolidation one and like like a third the shield of Catherine, and Catherine's is like getting bodied at stage 22. So it's I don't know if that's going to be enough, but you do have the consistent attack done too. So maybe it's enough if we had someone else here. Um, unfortunately, they don't have a good mythic. And then Agatha is someone that's going to be super far into the future. So I don't think she's really going to be able to be counted in a list like this, even though you'd probably run her. But she's also not really able to steal the shields and stuff that she can do. I believe it's which version of her exclusive? Yeah, exclusive one is when you would gain the shield. So it's like, okay, you can focus on this when you're already at Faction Wars 600 or something like that. I just think that's kind of um, disingenuous for a list like this on pushing a faction when it's like, okay, you already needed to have pushed all the other factions to get a character that's actually really good at this, in my opinion. So it's hard to really recommend her. Zexulu's obviously not going to be that good. He's just like an AoE damage dealer. Like the thing that I feel like they're missing is that survivability. Like they don't have a good shield here, and then their passive doesn't really fit too. Then you don't have like a long-term solution in your mythic that you can really invest in. With the buff of Olacaster, I do like the odds of her getting a buff maybe in the future, and then things can change. But at the moment, I don't. They have good pieces. They're just missing one really good piece to put them over the top, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is one of those factions where I would probably get closer to like not possible. If you were going to
Mm-hmm.
run anything, I like the idea of running very tanky damage dealers. Like I mentioned, Lamb, Turf, I think could potentially be fitting in really nicely, giving himself that huge shield and counterattack, and then just slowly poisoning, which poison decreases the boss's damage as well. So that could also be working out really
Mm-hmm.
well. And then you put in Quinlan, you put in Mamek, you put in Lamb. All four or all three of those guys are HP based damage dealers. And then here's a hot take: you put in Carrie to give them all a crit rate when she's dead, and then she just revives. She can drop a hit, and then even if she dies, it's not a big deal because she'll come back. I think that's really the only other person that can
Yeah.
actually survive and provide something on this team.
Yeah, I just don't see this for me. I think this is in the not possible category, like for
Yeah.
sure. It's just min maxing what you potentially can do, but at least a lot of these characters are so good that you're not going to feel bad with building. Like people are going to have a Sendo. If you have a Sendo, you're probably going to build a Sendo. Same with Quinlan. Same with Mammoth. And then let it ride with that and see how far you can get with those characters there. I also think Zach Zulu is super underrated potentially. Here, I'm just, maybe a hot take or whatever, but especially in this scenario, he has increased damage dealt by X amount when the target is under a debuff. But then he has a pretty good nuke, AoE nuke here. And then imagine them with the debuff and you have a couple other faction people, then he's hitting super hard and then he can like slash people. And then when they're under an attack down status, um, it increases damage by 30%. Who's immune to slaying, so maybe he does more damage against the boss. When you kill the other people, it's going to do more too. I was thinking not necessarily in Faction Abyss, but I think this guy as a nuker is just getting slept on, in my opinion. Just kind of like a side tangent, being able to combine all that together. But it doesn't get you to the goal of this and being able to push further. I think Dario is not going to get you anywhere. So I think this is not possible. Let's move on to the next one. Maybe there's some more interesting ones to talk about here. So we're moving this over to right near with the Brotherhood. Okay. Okay, we are now back with Sword Harbor Guards here. I think this one is going to be in the possible, maybe in this. They are missing a few things, but for most part, this class is amazing, or this faction's amazing. So let's break it down on the Sword Harbor Guards here. What are your thoughts?
And right off the bat, I personally view this as like another. It's hard to say for every faction, but this is like a whale faction. I feel like the only faction that's not going to be is Doom Legion, because
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. So first off, you have Catherine, guaranteed, right? She's the strongest character in the game, in my opinion. Um, and so if that's the case, we already have a really nice 1 out of 5. I think Ben Austin is amazing for faction as well. I've been using him recently because I recently got him myself. He's helped me clear through the waves, guaranteed, because of the cooldown increase. And then he's also really good for the boss to provide some extra damage and get that defense down out. I actually really like him for that. Although he can be awkward without, if you have exclusive 3, he's no longer defense downing, which is kind of awkward. I don't
Yeah.
like that part of his kit. But outside of that, it's like I need legendaries, right? Like who else am I going to be running in this epic category? Maybe Christian.
Okay, we are back with technical difficulties. Okay, yo, finish your thought. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean Capello, maybe. I don't really see a really good option in the epic category. So I'm looking at like Sigmund, Bari, Yoko, Luz. Like all the legendaries are pretty solid, but it's
hmm
gotta be more legendaries.
Like, so I've done this faction a ton. Like, this is by far my biggest expertise when it comes to Faction Abyss. I've been doing a ton of Faction Abyss at the moment, and the big thing for me that I feel like it's missing, we don't have a attack down and we don't have a speed down on this faction. So they have the best shielder slash healer there in Catherine, and then I just make her go faster than the boss, and so you can be prepared for that. But then other than that, there's a lot of things that are missing. And I think that attack down 2 is massive in being able to actually keep your team alive. And if they had that combination, they would be insane. And like you're saying about Ben Austin, ever since we figured out that whole affected thing, I think he's insane for waves. A lot of people go like, "Oh, Ben Austin's really great in arena and guild boss, but he's not good in dungeons." But you just crank up your affected, and you can get this to like 95% like working, which is basically like a mini silence, if not even better, because you're actively removing that skill versus just stopping them from doing it, so it can't be cleansed. So it's he's super good in the wave content, and then I haven't tried it yet since I got him exclusive 3. I just got it like a few days ago, so we'll see how that changes against the boss, being able to just spam that over and over again. But other than Catherine, like they really struggle to be able to affect the boss because they can't manipulate the speed of the boss there. So we have to like take that 2200 speed that the boss has or whatever, like in the 2000 range, and that's really brutal, especially with the combination of that and all the damage. So it's like this faction is so close and maybe one character away, and it feels bad because a lot of people will push it with like maybe 2 characters like Catherine, Sigmund, and Zia, for example. But it's like building out these other characters just makes the run convenient, not necessarily an actual doable run. So that is my problem so far. I really like Verdo because he has the crit rate reduction, but he doesn't reduce enough crit rate. If he had crit rate reduction 2, I think that would go super far into being able to help with that. And also his attack up 2 makes a really big difference on Zia. And ever since I've put him in, clearing that second wave, which is a problem, is super easy now, having that extra attack there. So it's like there is benefits to this faction. It's one of the better ones, but like going through Doom Legion versus this one, I almost feel like Doom Legion potentially is a little better overall versus this one.
Yeah, I think there's only really one faction that competes, and maybe we'll get to it on this video or mine. But you have Catherine, and you'd think like, oh, that's just game changing. But the problem is that if you're doing stuff that scales off your own HP, you're not going to win. If you're doing stuff that scales off the boss's attack, then you have a chance because
Mm-hmm.
even though you can up your HP by 100, 200% with all the shields or whatever you're going to go with, it doesn't matter because your HP is so low. But if you're reducing the boss's attack by 40%, or you're able to get multiple turns in before the boss does, then you have a chance because their buff, their faction buff, is honestly, I wish it was reversed for factions. Like if it was
Uh-huh.
10% reduced damage when above HP, even though I don't think that makes, I think that what it does is makes sense, but I wish it was reversed, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, because I'd rather have less damage taken because, 10% extra damage doesn't change the run
Mm-hmm.
realistically. It's the 10% damage reduction that does.
Yeah, completely agree. And then when you're already at 50%, you're getting one shot anyway. It doesn't save you. So it's like just
Yep.
give me like remove the damage portion entirely and just give me like 15% damage reduction, just period. And or up to 15% if you had all 5 members. And then you got a good passive there that's always useful. But at the moment, I completely agree. It just really doesn't do much. So
Yeah,
now that we're done with
maybe.
yeah, let's put them in the maybe category. They're like the best maybe faction purely. Like if anything, I feel like based on the other factions though, looking at them, I think they should be possible because it's like if this
The other
faction can't
ones
be
are gonna
possible,
be worse.
yeah, like then it's like then we might as well just put like everyone in the whole maybe not possible. So it's like let's put them in possible. Let's put them there.
All right, I'm okay with that. I like evening out the tiers, and I think Sword Harbor Guard is top 3.
Yeah,
So
yeah. If
I
they're top 3,
like
they
that.
should be possible. It should be like couple and maybe, couple and not possible, couple and possible. So we'll do that. And Now let's go to the next one here. So here we go. Last one for this video. We are going to be talking about Wizard's Eye. And I think this is a good faction. And I think they have potential. I think this is probably going to be one of those really good maybe classes. Just based on how hard this kind of stuff is, maybe it's in the non-possible category, but they have a lot of good characters here. We're looking at Space, Alec, Slaville, Nidrold. We got the new character in Gilliman here. So and then they have good epics as well. I think one of my favorites is going to be Visley. And then also
Yeah.
Daisy.
I think that this is arguably the second most free to play faction. You get space for free.
Uh-huh.
I think Eden exclusive 3 is really strong. You're going to get that heal. You're going to get the speed up and turn meter increase. I think that's actually a big deal when we're talking about extra turns. And I think Visley is also really good for this. I think between those 3, you're going to have permanent speed up. And then it just comes down to being able to survive with some of their characters. Now, I actually have none of the other legendaries besides Space. But if you have things like Nidrold, he could solo damage the boss for sure. Like he can do it on his own. Compared to like all the other characters that I have in my roster, I've seen Lucaia almost solo the boss, so I'm almost confident that Nidrold could do it. It's just a matter of staying alive, and I think for that, I would say Alec is kind of a must-have.
Yeah, it would be Alec, but not only Alec, but a very high exclusive Alec. Because
Yes.
like when it comes to this guy, 4-turn cooldown on the defense up, which I think is a big problem in this scenario because the boss does a very strong move. He has this big AoE, and then he has another AoE that's a little less strong, but it does bleed. Then he does a single target move. Then he goes back to the big AoE. So if you're not on a 3-turn cooldown, it's very difficult. Like, for example, Catherine, still having problems, and hers is on a 3-turn cooldown. So it's like, yeah, yes, you have the defense up by 60%. You have the tenacity by 30% as well on a 4-turn. But I think if you're getting crit, you're kind of screwed even with the tenacity. I don't see that being a benefit there, in my opinion. He does have the res debuff, which I like for the second move the boss does. And then Consolidation 2 there. He doesn't get a go again, which I think is a problem. I think he's going to do something, but you want to have a shielder like with him besides just his shield, his 30% shield at exclusive 3. So you're telling me you got to invest in exclusive 3 to get it. I do like that it comes out as one thing, exclusive 2 and a 30% shield. I think that's a good move, but you need exclusive 3 for that. And then the 4-turn cooldown is going to be an issue if you don't have someone else to kind of supplement the shielding, and their class doesn't really have that. What they do have going for them, though, is they, unlike Sword Harbor Guards, they have not as good of a shielder that Alec is in Catherine, but they do have the attack down 2 and the speed manipulation. So they have kind of all of it together, which I think could make it to where you can actually start to lap the boss. Because you have space,
Yes.
you have Alex, so like, and then that 4-turn cooldown becomes a 3-turn cooldown, and then you have a good chance of being able to do this, especially with the attack down 2 on Visley. So it's like, this is definitely one of the better factions, but you do need to get lucky on pulls. You need a Nidrold, you need an Alec, you need probably a lot of investment in Alec, and then space everyone gets, and then Visley, and then probably throw in like what, a Slavelle, and then you're probably good. But that's a lot to finally make it possible.
Yeah, I mean, Slavelle doesn't really truly shine until she gets her exclusive 1. Nidrold's fine at exclusive 0. He's still really solid. Alec, I would prefer the higher exclusives. I mean, they don't have a shielder besides Alec, as far as I know, unless there's like a really small one, or like Mueller does like a shield for himself,
He
I
looks like a
think.
shielder, doesn't he?
Yeah, I
Ally
think he does. Does he have
protection,
shield? Yeah, it's
12%,
self-shielding. That's right.
20%. Yeah, no, that's terrible.
It's just, I mean, what, Hell 9000? You're not going to get much
Yeah,
much value out of him.
yeah, no, he ain't doing
This
anything.
this faction would be is just a character away from becoming really strong, because they have the Terminator manipulators that no other faction really does have. Um, and at least not as the same quality. And so I think with that, you can really make some characters really strong by giving them multiple turns, whereas other factions have a really hard time getting multiple turns before that boss comes around with the AoE.
Yeah, I think they need to get like Wim to start studying magic, and then they got it. Yeah, it's like that's the thing they're missing to be able to do this, and then they would have like the full team, and like I'd feel really confident pushing them super far with something like that, especially they have like each role, you know, it's like they seem very clear, whereas the other ones not necessarily. It's like you're kind of fine, I'll make it work. Whereas when they have someone in a particular role, they they really excel at that role with this faction. Like Space is the best, Nidril is one of the best, Visley is amazing, you know, and so it's and then Alex amazing. So it's like they all of them at their particular role is really good. So I think they're in the possible category. What do you think? Well, or
Yeah, I would. I put them in a
maybe
maybe.
well
Kind
because
of that.
the big flaw is that they don't have another shielder. So we'll put them in the maybe. But like I'm almost selling to myself on them that they should be possible and Sword Harbor guards should be maybe. You know?
That's a argument right there. I mean, okay, so let's think about that for a second. Who am I bringing in for the five? I mean, you kind of have to have Visley for the attack down.
Okay, let's.
You're gonna have the speed down on our basic too. You're gonna have space, right? You're gonna basically have constant speed up and speed down and attack down. So that's really nice.
Uh-huh.
And then you're gonna bring in probably Slavel Nidrolled as your damage package, which is a really strong damage package, probably the strongest outside of one other faction. And then you're going to bring in your tank package, which is Alec. The problem I would see if we're just rating this as like pure strength of faction, I could see that. The problem
Mhm.
is that I don't think you could do it without Alec exclusive 3.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's just he's gonna need
that's
all of the
nuts.
investment in there, and so it's possible. It's just gonna be very difficult, and then also you
I
need
can
to
see the
hit a
possible
ton of
argument.
characters. Oh wait, what about Gilliman here? What is she? She has the okay, so the speed down as well on the
Yeah,
AOE.
she just has a lot of damage,
Yeah.
and I like the speed down, but it's really all damage for her. And
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and she's
It's
good, but
just not
when it
good
comes to
enough. I think.
this, it's like we don't really care about removing buffs in this situation. And then the AoE speed down's nice, but really the one we care about speeding down is the boss because like the damage difference between the side minions and the boss is just insane. So we don't really have to worry about slowing them down or anything like that. Like if anything, we want to keep them alive, like keep the carry alive and focus the boss to not give the boss more crit rate, if anything. So I think they deserve to be in the possible category. Like, well,
I can
let's
see
throw
the
them in
argument.
there. Let's
I
throw
can
them
see
in
the
there and give them a little. You know, maybe this is a really nice tier list. Or just good
argument.
positive vibes here. So here we go.
You
We
want to
got
have as many people in the possible category, right?
yeah,
That's the
ideally.
goal, right? Otherwise, they need some major help.
Yeah, but we're realists here. We got to be realistic. And also, I think this kind of speaks to just like how difficult this is. Should it be this difficult, especially when the whole point of this is to gather resources for other parts of the game? I do think them adding more, making things more difficult in the dungeons, potentially adding more and more guild boss levels means that it's totally fine to have it this difficult, but I think that's a debate for a different time. So this is going to be the 5 for this one. Be sure to check out Veiled Shot's video. I'm going to link it right here, and you guys can check that one out. It should be live at the time of this one being live as well. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys in that video.